When RMC came along and transformed the new Texas Giant in 2011, it changed everything. It used to be that old wooden coasters would get rough, they'd get hard to repair, and the parks would discard them for something new. Over the last 12 years, 14 wooden coasters have gotten the RMC overhaul, but honestly, there should be more. Today, let's go around the world and pick out 10 defunct wooden coasters that should have been RMC'd. Before I start, I'm not saying the best case scenario for these wooden coasters was to RMC it. These are all coasters at parks that lived on after the coaster was taken down, and instead of demolishing it, they could have given it new life with RMC. There are a lot of wooden coasters that close with their parks, and I'm not considering those. RMC doesn't do much good in a closed park. First, an honorable mention, Cyclone at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This was a din replica of the Coney Island Cyclone, and over the years, it had a lot of problems. It apparently operated well between 1991 and 1993, but after the 1994 Northridge earthquake, it was never the same. Magic Mountain tore this down in 2006 to build Apocalypse, and that was 5 years before the first RMC hybrid. Later on, they gave the RMC treatment to Colossus. Magic Mountain got their world-class hybrid. That's why this is just an honorable mention, but they could have kept the classic Colossus running as it was, and transformed the problematic Cyclone into an awesome hybrid instead. This would mean no Apocalypse, and that's a really solid GCI, so maybe all's well that ends well. Number 10. Jackrabbit at Clementon Park. This is the oldest coaster on the list, built way back in 1919, but it had some pretty decent size. It stood 50 feet tall and covered 1,380 feet of track, and after the 2002 season, they shut it down. Right after this was closed, they got to work on their new age wooden coaster, the SNS Tsunami, renamed J2 or Jackrabbit 2. For a small park like Clementon, turning Jackrabbit into a small-scale hybrid would have worked out great. It didn't have to be very tall, just give it a steep drop, some low-to-the-ground inversions, some ejector hills. They didn't even need to make it taller or longer. This would have been a great addition to the park, but after standing but not operating for 5 years, it was finally removed in 2007, and that's when J2 became Hellcat. Number 9. Pegasus at Efteling. In 1991, Efteling opened this small-scale Intamin wooden coaster, standing just 49 feet tall and covering 1,600 feet of track. Not exactly a kid's coaster, but definitely a mild thrill ride. It had an 18-year lifespan, being torn down in 2009, being replaced by a new modern dueling woody, the GCI Joris Endedrak. Efteling has built up a very nice collection of coasters, especially for a park that's more about theming than coasters. Having a small-scale RMC like I wanted for Jackrabbit would have gone a long way, especially if they could have found another spot for Joris Endedrak. I doubt they would have done it, but given that it closed in 2009, it never had the chance. Number 8. Dania Beach Hurricane at Boomers. This coaster wasn't actually part of Boomers. It was right next to it, operated by a separate company. This was built by Coaster Works Incorporated. Not exactly who you think of when it comes to major wooden coasters, but this was 100 feet tall and 3,200 feet long. A double out and back layout. This opened in 2000, but by 2011 it was shut down. The operators blamed the humid climate for making the track too rough, and the bad economy meant they didn't have the money to fix it. This stood idle for 5 years, then it was torn down along with Boomers in 2016. It closed right when New Texas Giant was opening, so if they had the will and the money to do it, they could have given this to RMC, and they would have had a lot to work with, and Dania, Florida would have suddenly become a destination. Number 7. Sierra Tantante at Mirabalandia. This woody opened in 1992, and it had some pretty good size. 115 feet tall, over 3,200 feet of track. It opened as Europe's tallest, fastest, and longest wooden coaster, but it would only last 15 years. In 2007, Italy passed a new regulation for amusement park rides, and to stay in compliance, Sierra Tantante would need a major overhaul. This was torn down in 2008 and replaced by iSpeed. Now, look at Mirabalandia. In addition to iSpeed, they have an awesome collection of coasters, and a big RMC hybrid would make this truly elite. Maybe they would have done this had this not closed in 2007, or maybe the structure would have still needed a major overhaul. I don't know, but this would have been awesome. Number 6. White Canyon at Yomiuriland. This coaster stood 116 feet tall and covered over 3,600 feet of track, but it was also built by RCCA in Togo, so that's a scary combination. This was modeled after the Coney Island Cyclone. To ride, you had to be at least in junior high school, so that's like 11 or 12 years old, and you also had to be under the age of 60. This shut down right after RMC got its start, its final day being January 14th, 2013, and it was replaced by a music hall. With a park like this, already sporting the classic Togo Bandit, this could have given them a really great 1-2 punch. Number 5. Cheetah at Wild Adventures. This park opened in 1996, and not long after, they started putting in some major coasters. First Boomerang, then Twisted Typhoon, and in 2001, they added a CCI wooden coaster, Cheetah. This stood 92 feet tall and covered 2,680 feet of track, an out and back layout with a figure 8 ending, using a steel structure. In 2020, the park announced this would be shut down. A lot of people thought they may go with the RMC treatment. This park is owned by Hercules, and they've bought major RMCs for the other parks, but this was torn out. For a park with mostly kids rides, having just a couple extreme coasters that are also very common clones, RMC Cheetah would have really put this park on the map. It wouldn't just be a one and done credit stop, and they'd finally have a true headliner coaster. Number 4. Hercules at Dorney Park. This Din wooden coaster opened in 1989, featuring a 151-foot drop right over the lake, covering 4,000 feet of track. This had problems from the start, the train constantly stalling out, hills having to be reprofiled, the big turn needing constant retracking, and after just 14 years, it was time to pull the plug. RMC missed this one by 8 full years, but I'm sure they would have loved this project. This was such a unique layout, such a big structure, such a long ride, and everyone knows Dorney Park could have used a standout ride, having an otherwise decent collection of supporting coasters. Number 3. Thunder Road at Carowinds. This was the park's first major coaster, opening in 1976, standing 93 feet tall, covering over 3,800 feet, having 2 tracks that mirror each other. It was a classic, but in 2015, it was deemed expendable. Carowinds had just opened Fury 325, and that was part of a $50 million expansion. This included a big expansion of the water park, and Thunder Road was right in the way. Unlike some of the others, I think this one was doomed regardless. Cedar Fair didn't start working with RMC until the following year, but even then, it was still in the way, so I had to go. If RMC could have turned this into a Twisted Colossus-style Mobius Loop dueling hybrid, that would just be mind-blowing. Carowinds is building up their coaster lineup, but they're still missing that elite hybrid. Some people want them to convert Hurler, but they already had a big wooden coaster they threw away. This would have made its fans a lot happier also. A lot of people signed a petition to save the park's oldest major coaster, and like Twisted Colossus, they would have altered it, but at least it would still kind of be there. Number 2. Rolling Thunder at Six Flags Great Adventure. This goes back to the early years at Great Adventure, a dual wooden coaster that stood 96 feet tall, covered 3,200 feet of track, and over the years, it saw a lot of activity around it. In 2005, it got a 456-foot neighbor in King Dakar, and the next year, it was dwarfed by another wooden coaster, El Toro. After 34 years, this was seen as expendable, and in 2013, when Great Adventure wanted to attach a drop tower to King Dakar, they tore it down to make room for a queue line. I heard Six Flags considered giving this the RMC treatment. At that point, they had 2 successful coasters in the chain, but the structure wasn't good enough. That's such a shame, and probably the closest that any coaster on this list actually came to getting RMC'd. Imagine an RMC hybrid right next to El Toro. That would launch Great Adventure's lineup even higher than it is now. Number 1. Son of Beast at Kings Island. You had to know this was going to top the list. Never has RMC had something to work with as great as this. It stood 218 feet tall, covering over 7,000 feet of track. There was so much there. Son of Beast had 2 problems. For one, it closed in 2009 and was torn down in 2012. RMC was still pretty new at that point, but after seeing what they were doing with New Texas Giant, I wonder if Cedar Fair and RMC had any conversations. But that leads me to the second problem, and that was the structure. Kings Island had sued the manufacturer and the lumber company, so it seems like they wouldn't have been able to work with it, unless they made some major repairs. People are going crazy over a ground-up revival of Son of Beast, and I'm all for that. But can you imagine how cool it would be to have RMC the original? That would be an insane addition to a great lineup, and there's no doubt this is the number 1 coaster on this list. That's a wrap for this video. Let me know what you think of the list, and if there are any other coasters that could have made it. I found there weren't that many good candidates, so I'd be curious to see what you all find out there. Before you go, don't forget to drop a like, and if you're new here and love coasters, please give me a sub. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, and my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my baseball channel if you're a baseball fan like me. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.